Hello, BookTube. I don't know exactly what this video will be. I don't know, first of all, whether or not it will upload. It's raining here, and that tends to interfere with the Wi-Fi. It also interferes with the peace of mind of a certain someone who has been sulking since the rain started because she doesn't even like the fact that it is raining, much less that she's eventually going to have to go out in it. But also, in addition to that, in addition to not even knowing whether or not this video will upload, I don't really know what it is. I guess it's just a chance for me to chat with you about books. The books that I have read today. Minus only one. There's one that I read today. I'm going to have to reread chunks of it before I settle down to write about it. I can't really show you what it is, but I can show you how big it is. It's 900 pages long. It's certifiably insane. So I'm not only got to go through it again, but I've also got to make some sense out of it. But that's more in the nature of an am reading. I have already read it, but I'm not done with it yet, so we don't need to include that. So we can just talk about the books that I have read today. Rereads and also a new book to me. So one of the rereads is this rather nice textured trade paperback of Life Studies and For the Union Dead by the poet Robert Lowell. Life Studies was a tonal departure for him. Everyone commented on it at the time in 1960 or whatever. And then For the Union Dead is a masterpiece. It's also a tonal departure, but it's a masterpiece. Largely about, as you can see on the cover there, Robert Gould Shaw. That is an etching of the Shaw Memorial, which is here in Boston, and which I drag you to if you come to visit me. If you come to visit and we go to the Brattle and you have any time at all, I will walk you across Boston Common. Please remember, if you're a tourist, it's not Boston Commons. It's Boston Common. I will walk you across the Common. I will walk you up the hill so that we are getting closer and closer to the State House, where so many of my old cronies still put in their time. I won't say work. And I will show you the Shaw Memorial, which is somber and really, really kind of, I think, breathtaking. In a way, kind of breathtaking. And Robert Gould Shaw, as some of you will know, there was an old Morgan Freeman, Denzel Washington movie called Glory. Morgan Freeman, Denzel Washington, and Matthew Broderick, who played Robert Gould Shaw. Not a bad movie. Some interesting bits in it. Unfortunately, no good acting other than Denzel Washington. And Morgan Freeman doing what, he does Morgan Freeman. I don't know if that counts as good acting or bad acting, but he does Morgan Freeman in that movie. But Shaw is a fascinating figure, and Lowell has had in his whole life a fascinating constellation of thoughts about Boston. Because Robert Lowell, that's not just the name of a poet. He's also a Lowell. He's in the extended family tree, the same extended family tree as the Gould family and the Shaw family. He was distantly related to Robert Gould Shaw. He's, to call him a Boston Brahmin would be to cause the ghost of an old friend of mine to spin in his cenotaph. But he was close. He's not just Robert Lowell, but a Lowell. The more I read his poetry, some of it, especially For the Union Dead, the more highly I esteem it, the more I like it. And this is true too, although rereading this volume, I just barreled right through it. And that is not, I have come to the conclusion for a long time now, but heightened by listening to all the poetry fans on BookTube, that is not the way to read poetry. That is a very newspaper critic way to read things. And let's face it, most things are so bad that even that way, you're not missing anything. You're not going to miss anything. Reading at my normal pacing speed, taking a few mental notes, maybe even a few written notes, and then you're done. And you've got plenty of time to make your deadline and write your 800 words. That kind of reading is going to do just fine for something like this. Okay, just fine. You're not going to be missing any Hegelian nuances involved. But with poetry, especially really good poetry, yeah. With really good poetry, I am learning that this is not the way I read this is not the way to read it. In my own defense, I know these two works really well. I've read them many many times, but it was enjoyable anyway. I don't know if I'll keep this paperback, but it was very very enjoyable to go through them, moving. Um, Maybe not in the way that I specifically like poetry to be. It was moving because I was constantly aware of how the writing of the subject matter was moving the poet, as if not in terms of the narrator of the poems, where the interaction of that stand-in, that creation of first person, is reacting to the sentiments in the poet and the events in the poem. Not that, but the actual poet. And I don't give two craps in a pan about the actual poet. And I don't want to have to. But 1960 was, after all, 1 year after 1959. So those days are gone. But anyway, the next book that I read was something new to me. This is Season at the Point by Jack Connor, which is illustrated. This is there's someone working on birding equipment. It's all these very simple black and white line photo illustrations, and this is a book about Cape May. This is about the luscious natural environment of Cape May and what a gold mine it is for birders. I just mentioned just the other day that birders are certifiably nuts, and that I tried to distance myself from them by saying that I was not in my heyday a birder. I was more an owler. And I maintain, a couple of you emailed me and said, that seems like a spurious distinction at best. But a couple of you who are birders emailed me and said, A, you're not entirely wrong. We are a little touched in the head. And B, you're not entirely wrong that owlers are a little different. I don't think I was either. I don't think I was a birder or an owler. I just found it fascinating to see if I could see one of these magnificent apex predators, who are as smart as I am, in the natural world. I wanted to see if I could see that, because if I do, it's going to be entirely the owl's decision. Let's not fool ourselves here. An owl can read the writing on a nickel from 5 miles away. And no owl is going to. I'm not going to see an owl accidentally at dawn or at twilight. I'm not going to see one accidentally. I'm going to see one because they know that I'm there and they're letting me see them. I just found that fascinating. I have been to Cape May many times, never in a birding context. This gave me the birding context. This is the stories of the people, their quirky sentimentalities, their quirky habits, but also lots and lots of really good, even rhapsodic descriptions of the natural world, and especially of birds. There's a whole chapter on owls in here, but there are a whole chapter on lots of other birds that I wouldn't look twice at, much less haul out my life list and start making enthusiastic annotations. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. This is from see, look at that. That is just lovely. It's understated. It's not beating you over the head, but it's all throughout this book. Let's see what we have here. 1991. So this would have been right in the Donahue Interregnum. This would have come out right at a time when I was not reviewing books, when I was not getting them in the mail. I wasn't farming them out to people, wasn't commissioning them, wasn't pitching them to other editors. I wasn't doing anything like that. So I enjoyed it. A birding book that I enjoyed, almost like Fate. That it came to me so soon after bad-mouthing birders. Then we have this thing. I could swear that I not only read this thing, I have read this before, but I could swear that I reviewed it. Let's see if the date lines up. Yeah, 2007. I could swear that I reviewed it, but I don't know. A lot of my reviews, I usually look on Google, for them, my name and then the name of the author and the name of the book, but Google seems to me to be dramatically less effective at finding anything lately. So I could swear that I viewed this thing, but I could not find any hint of that. And I could be mistaken because I've reviewed this author many times from many newspapers. The author is Alison Weir, who's a historian but also a historical novelist. And this is a novel of hers, Innocent Traitor, which is about Lady Jane Grey, who I mentioned on this channel recently with a Friday Reads, about Eric Ives's biography of her that I recently found and read and loved. And boy, oh boy, I remember liking this book, but this time around, it is so good. It is so much better than I remembered. It's easily the best novel. I'm thinking I'm thinking of Alison Weir in terms of her interminable Wives of Henry VIII series. And those novels, they had research and they had, I guess, a kind of stolid heart to them, but they were dull. All of them were. And this is anything but. Oh my. And I don't think it's a question of just the subject matter. The subject matter is fascinating. You think when you look at, this is a novel about Lady Jane Grey, who was squeaked into the line of succession of the English throne, literally by a pen emendation on an inheritance device. No one was expecting her to be part of the succession at first. For a long time, no one was. But King Henry's legitimate male heir, King Edward, died before he could have any issue. So the crown had to go to somebody. I think that that King Edward's device, which was coerced out of him, I think that it misses the obvious recipient of the crown, but that would have required jumping out of the genetic line, and I guess we don't want to do that with the monarchy. But anyway, you would think, or I would think, if something is calling itself a novel of Lady Jane Grey, that it's going to be very dreary. There's going to be more and more of this pious stuff that came from the movie Lady Jane with Helena Bonham Carter. A very, very good movie, but no, I was a little bit confused when I started rereading this because I actually didn't remember it doing that, and it does not do that. But it's not just that. Lady Jane Grey herself almost fades completely into the background of this book, which I guess, considering her personality, was fitting, because there's so much else going on here. So much else. I mean, there's the whole of Jane Grey's life. So Henry VIII is still alive. He's still a character at the beginning of this book. It's the Seymour brothers, who are wonderfully portrayed here. Also, it's Catherine Parr, Henry's last wife, who is, it's Innocent Traitor, and so it's about Lady Jane Grey, and thanks to the fact that she wrote a series of books on the wives of Henry VIII, Alison Weir has, in fact, written a whole novel on Catherine Parr. But Catherine Parr in this book is 10 times more vigorously drawn than she is in her own novel that Weir wrote, 20 years after this thing? She's easily the best part of the book, but there's lots of other stuff too. It never slows down for a minute. The problem that you often come across with historians who are novelists is that when they're being novelists, they're a little too much historians, and when they're being historians, they're a little too much novelists. That's why it used to be, and probably in some circles still is, looked down upon by historians. And Alison Weir is definitely guilty of that in a number of books, but not in this one. Very happy to have a print copy of this and to have gone at it again. And then the final thing that I read today, a reread. So there's one new read plus that thing, whatever it is, that phone book size thing, and then rereads. A very good day, just laying on the fancy couch, my little dog curled up on top of me, putting down one book when I finish it and picking up another. Just wonderful. And there is one other thing that I've been using. I've been interspersing it with all of the reading that I do all the time, not just today, but every day. And that is that whole run of Master comics that I showed you in an earlier video from the 1940s, from World War II era, mainly the adventures of Captain Marvel Jr. I decided rather than just pick and choose that I would just read my way through the whole run on Master Comics, which is a fairly long run. It's long enough to change artists a few times. And I've been doing that. I'm not done with it yet. I'm not overdosing on it, so I'm not spending a huge amount of time on it every day. But I do find it fascinating. In a whole bunch of different. I found it immensely satisfying, just viscerally, when I read those adventures the first time I read them. A long, long time ago, long before some of your parents were born, when I read them the first time, and found the Adventures of Captain Marvel Jr. and the Adventures of Superboy, viscerally satisfying. Now I'm able to think about them in very much different terms. I still find them visually satisfying, but now I'm able to think about them. And Captain Marvel Jr. it's fascinating in a way that Superboy is not. Almost. I mean, Superboy is Clark Kent. They're the same person. Just one is wearing a civilian disguise. But Superboy has a weakness. Kryptonite. Which he discovers when he's a teenager. There's an issue where we get the story of how he learns what kryptonite is. And after that, it's always present. A two-bit gangster on the streets of Smallville could have a lump of kryptonite. So that there's a possibility of challenge there. There's no challenge otherwise. Superboy is a teenage version of Superman, but if Superman is all-powerful, that's infinite, and a younger version of infinite is still infinite. So Superboy is not challengeable in any physical way. It's not like he's going to look at the need to move a mountain and say it's too heavy for me, I need to wait until I'm older. No, that's not going to happen. So it's kryptonite or bust. But with Captain Marvel Jr., once the crippled newsboy, Freddie Freeman, says his magic words, he becomes Captain Marvel Jr., who has no weaknesses of any kind. At all. You might think, if you're comic book inclined, that a weakness of his would be that a telepathic villain could make him say his magic words, transform back into a helpless mortal, and kill him then. But he's not vulnerable to telepathy. He's not vulnerable to anything when he's Captain Marvel Jr. You can fill the issues with peril to Freddie Freeman, including some gimmicks that I must have, once upon a time, I must have thought they were the coolest thing in the world, but now I look at them and think, even for a comic book aimed at children during wartime, come on. Freddie Freeman is interesting. I mean, some of the gimmicks that I'm talking about are like Teen Savannah. Dr. Savannah, this little bald-headed gnomish guy, is one of Captain Marvel, the adult Captain Marvel's foremost enemies. One of his repeat enemies. He has a whole family, a Savannah family. And Freddie Freeman, Captain Marvel Jr., fights Teen Savannah. And there's an issue where Teen Savannah, everybody in the world of Captain Marvel Jr. knows that Freddie Freeman is Captain Marvel Jr. He transforms right in front of people. And villains know to attack Freddie Freeman. Anyway, in one issue, Teen Savannah knocks him unconscious as Freddie Freeman, ties his hands and legs, puts a gag around his mouth, and throws him off the top of a building. Why he doesn't shoot him in the head while he's unconscious, I don't know. He throws him off the top of a building, and while Freddie Freeman is falling and thinking, oh golly, I'm sunk, he notices a flagpole with an eagle carved into the end of it, and manages to get the eagle to snag his gag off on the way down, and says his magic word. Transforms into Captain Marvel Jr. So you get stuff like that. But far more interesting for me is that not all of Captain Marvel Jr.'s enemies are teenagers. The writers of Superboy, the real Superboy, the Adventures of Superman when he was a boy, they aside from miscellaneous gangsters, there are always gangsters everywhere. There are gangsters, but aside from them, the pointed adversaries that Superboy tends to have usually are his own age. And that is true in Captain Marvel Jr. with somebody like Teen Savannah. But Captain Marvel Jr.'s most popular villain by far is a green costume character named Captain Nazi. We don't know exactly what Captain Nazi can and cannot do physically. In a couple of his early appearances, He seems to be able to give Captain Marvel Jr. trouble. And yet he's a grown man, punching and walloping a teenage boy. It's odd. It's interesting. You're not supposed to think about these things. None of the writers thought about these things. None of the readers. None of the original readers. Not that any of those original readers are still alive. No one could live that long. But nobody thought anything about these things. It is necessary, in order to enjoy these things completely, it is necessary to slip into an innocent mind frame. You've just got to do that. If you're going to enjoy these things, you've just got to do that. You can't be snarking your way through it, or you'll be removing a lot of the fun. So, for instance, in the Batman comics, the 1940s Batman comics that Michael J. Vaughan is reading all the way through, once Batman takes in Robin the Boy Wonder, Dick Grayson, as his ward, there are many, many, many issues where they will see the bat signal that means that the police want to summon Batman and Robin, but they'll see it because they're sleeping in bed together. And you just can't allow your mind to think what we think now. You've got to think something more innocent, just completely more innocent. Same thing with Captain Marvel Jr. I'm working my way through those issues, and about every third issue I hit something that could not be reprinted today, that is just wartime propaganda. Wartime propaganda is designed to pep up the troops, keep the home front fires burning, and demonize the enemy. And in Captain Marvel Jr., that largely, Superboy is free of that. There's nothing like that in Superboy. It's all small town stuff. But Captain Marvel Jr. is a very much different thing, very nationalistic comic book. And in his comics, it most often takes the form of Germans are bumbling oafs, which is an insult and as far from the truth as possible, but it's not that dehumanizing. But the Japanese, so a lot of these adventures simply could not be reprinted and aren't all that good either, but I'm reading all of them. But aside from that, the last thing I want to show you here for this reading today is also a comic book that I recently found. I have the individual issues, and I knew in my mind that they had been collected into a trade paperback, but I'd never seen it. It's long since out of print, and I found a copy. So, and it's this. It's Tarzan versus Predator at the Earth's core. And this is a joint production of Walt Simonson and the artist Lee Weeks. You don't get any real Walt Simonson artwork here. Every once in a while, a sound effect. I think a lot of the page layouts seem more Walt Simonson than they do Lee Weeks. Lee Weeks is a terrific, terrific comic book artist. Why either Lee Weeks or Walt Simonson, who's also no shakes as a comic book artist, were not commissioned to do the cover of this thing, I do not know. Or if you don't want to commission somebody, if Lee Weeks and Walt Simonson are too expensive for a trade paperback when you don't know how much the trade paperback is going to sell, well, you could always reprint one of the individual issue comic covers that Lee Weeks did. They're all great. Instead, we get this. I don't even know what's going on here. But as you can see, and as you'll know, whether you don't need to know anything about comics, you don't need to know anything about science fiction, don't need to know anything about anything to know immediately what this is about. Because you know what the Predator is, you've seen those movies, and you know who Tarzan is, because Tarzan is immortal. Tarzan is an immortal character. You say his name, you immediately know who he is. You immediately know he's the Lord of the Jungle. You might not know more than that. If you're a Tarzan connoisseur, I've read all the Tarzan adventures 80 million times each. And I have also read Tarzan Alive by Jose Felipe Farmer. So I've also read every comic book adaptation of Tarzan that I could ever get my hands on, including some that have not, as far as I know, been reprinted. I think it was Dark Horse that did a really good run on Tarzan that I've never seen a reprint volume of those. But this is a franchise thing. This is Tarzan facing off against these extraterrestrial hunters called the Predators that are in the movies and that have been visiting Earth for a long time, as we know from the movies. And here they have come hunting the turn of the 20th century in Tarzan's world. And it's terrific. Absolutely terrific. We get, let's see here. Let me give you we get Tarzan and the Waziri trekking off into the jungle. Uh, and you think at first, when you start reading this, I read these issues back when they came out. That was in the early 90s. Is that right? Oh, no, the late 90s, 1997. Yeah, this was also Dark Horse. Well, the book is not. This book is 1997, so this was probably the early 90s. That it that the issues came out. Does this have a writer? Uh, oh, the story is by Walt Simonson, and the artwork is by Lee Weeks. And here we get Tarzan. He's not tragic. He's not beast-like. He's extremely well done. Walt Simonson I don't know anything about Walt Simonson, but he must be a Tarzan fan because Tarzan is perfectly characterized all throughout this adventure. And you think at first that it's just going to be these predators coming into Tarzan's jungle, maybe hunting some elephants, then maybe hunting Tarzan. Uh, because the predators come to Earth in order to have exotic game hunts. They're not looking to conquer. They're looking to test themselves against the fiercest creatures on Earth. And you do get that for the first installment of the issues that are collected here, but then the story keeps expanding wonderfully. It keeps expanding wonderfully. There's more than one predator, and also there's more than one Edgar Rice Burroughs creation, because we of course go to Pellucidar, the world inside the world. We go to the savage world of Pellucidar, and when we're in Pellucidar, we meet David Innes, who is another of Edgar Rice Burroughs' characters. See, we get rampaging T-Rexes against the predators, and we get there's the predator special effects from the movies. They have invisibility screens. They have heat trackers. It's all wonderfully, wonderfully done. David Innes is different from Tarzan. They aren't copycats of the same character. They are different characters. Boy, oh boy, Tarzan's character gets better and better as this book goes on. He is more impulsive, just as intelligent as David Innes. He's not a wild animal. He's no me Tarzan. But he's more impulsive. He's more savage. And in the end, I don't know how Simonson does it, but he's more terrifying. There are a couple of moments in the final bits of this adventure when we don't just have T-Rexes, we have Mahars. We have Mahars and their slave Thipdars. Those of you who know your Pellucidar people, your Pellucidar villains. There are a couple of scenes at the end of this, at the climax of this story, where David Innes is borderline terrified of Tarzan, as he should be. As he should be. The key mistake that people make about Tarzan when they only know the name, and everybody knows the name because he's immortal, is that he's just a guy in a loincloth. No. No, not at all. Any more than Conan is a guy with a sword. No. No. There's something... Tarzan is a fit opponent for these predators, and the end result is no surprise to any Tarzan fan. And the effect that he has when he is enraged, when he thinks that Jane is in danger, when he thinks that she might even be dead and a trophy of these creatures, the effect that the enraged Tarzan has on David Innes, who is a normal man. He's an Edgar Rice Burroughs hero and an adventurer, but he's a normal guy. The effect that an enraged Tarzan has on him is well done. It's subtle, but it's well done. And also, Tarzan also shifts easily to humor, which is not a thing he's known for in the movie adaptations or in most comic book adaptations. But in Edgar Rice Burroughs' novels, he is very much a creature of giant mirths and giant melancholies. So he can shift to merriment when the cause is there. And this has a rousing ending. Rousing. The ending, I won't spoil it for you, but the ending involves a stampede of dinosaurs, which exist in Pellucidar. And the Lee Weeks does such a great job with orchestrating the visuals of the ending that I won't even nitpick that the dinosaurs in question that he has stampeding at the end didn't have mouths full of razor teeth. That's a very good dramatic visual for the end of the comic, but maybe they make him different in Pellucidar. But I loved it. absolutely loved it. I don't, in fact, much like a couple of the books here, I don't remember loving this as much when I had the individual issues. And now the individual issues are here, battered and falling apart on their hinges somewhere in some long box. Now I don't need to think about them because I have this thing. So next time I feel like what ends up being, I mean, it's a property grab. It's an IP property grab. But nevertheless, it's a fantastic realization of Tarzan, and there aren't many of those. You'd think there would be. But there aren't many of those. So the next time I feel like that, I can just grab this instead of fishing around for my comics. So there you go. I don't. That's 30 minutes of just chatting about books. I don't know what this is. These are the books that I read today. -1. Uh, I, no, no flexing intended, as the kids say. Keep in mind, I do nothing else. If you did nothing else, you'd have a pile of books to read in a day. I, it's been just a rainy evening, a rainy afternoon, so it's perfect for just stretching out and reading. When I'm feeling, when I'm feeling my most Protestant work ethic, I get all the day's work done before 9 in the morning. There's a period where, in the morning, there's a period where I now have enough natural light so that I'm not straining my eyes to work. But my little dog, whose head is buried right there, my little dog absolutely does not want to get up, rain or shine. My little dog's not a morning person at all. She's not a morning girl. So there's a period of time after first light, but before she starts stretching and thinking about maybe I want to hop down and go about the day, there's a period of time there where I can get stuff done. And usually when I'm being good, when I'm not just reading, I'll do my work then. Anyway, there's these things, and then there's this thing. And that's it. That was my reading for today. No idea what this is. But it might not upload anyway. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Maybe we'll do a reading for tomorrow. I have no idea. I'll see you then. Thank you.